I'm sure you heard the stories of legendary heroes in pursuit of outlaws in the Wild West. These proclaimed legends, such as Wyatt Earp, the lawman, were little better than some of the criminals they lock up. It just goes to show few people live up to be the legends. But there was one, a man who overcame adversity. He was noble through and through, and put away some 3,000 outlaws in his time. Hollywood and history tell his story, of course, but it does him the disservice of trying to erase his name from it. He is known as the Lone Ranger, but you would never know it's him, just because history didn't want to acknowledge the color of his skin. Contrary to what classic westerns might have us believe, 1 in 4 American cowboys was actually African American. We don't necessarily get that reality when the only images we have of our minds is John Wayne or Hollywood's The Lone Ranger. But in fact, the true inspiration behind the Lone Ranger was real-life U.S. Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves, an African American who fled the Civil War, befriended the Seminole and Creek Indians, and eventually became one of the greatest lawmen of the Wild West. Bass Reeves was born a slave in 1838 in Crawford County, Arkansas. George Reeves, his master, made Bass Reeves his personal companion and servant. Then, when the Civil War broke out, Reeves went into battle with his master and fought for the Confederacy. It was during the Civil War that Reeves made his great escape. Some say he left because of a dispute over a card game, wherein Reeves beat up his master and fled to avoid punishment. Others say he had heard that slaves were being freed and simply ran in pursuit for his own freedom. Whatever the case, Reeves took refuge with the Creek and Seminole Indians in what is now Oklahoma. He learned their languages and customs and sharpened his skills as an ambidextrous marksman. When all slaves were freed in 1865, Reeves no longer a fugitive, he then left Indian Territory to farm his own land. A year later, he married Nellie Janine of Texas, with whom he raised 5 girls and 5 boys. While a successful farmer, rancher, and father, Reeves occasionally worked as a scout and used his tracking skills to help lawmen find criminals. But his true second act had yet to begin. During the chaos of the Civil War, Indian Territory, where federal and state governments had virtually no jurisdiction, became the hiding grounds for outlaws. Reeves was hired as a U.S. Marshal to help in pursuit of these outlaws. Reeves, along with the other deputies, was ordered to bring the outlaws back, dead or alive. Reeves took his job as a marshal very seriously. He was 6 feet, 2 inches tall. He rode a large white stallion as he patrolled the 75,000 square miles of Indian Territory. The rough and tough lawman with his intimidating black hat, slick suits, and polished shoes brought over 3,000 felons to justice. In the course of doing so, Reeves was involved in his fair share of shootouts. Despite being shot at multiple occasions, he managed to dodge every bullet, earning the name the Indomitable Marshal. Dodging bullets was by no means his only skill. Reeves used the fact that he never learned how to read or write because he was born a slave to his advantage in a very inventive and effective way. Before pursuit, he would have someone read him the warrants so he could memorize which was which. Often he would distract outlaws with his gimmick, asking them to read the piece of the warrant or some other letter for him. In their confusion, Reeves would draw his gun. By all accounts, Reeves was also a master of disguise. He would appear as felons, as a cowboy, farmer, or even an outlaw himself. And when he wasn't in disguise, he was easily recognized by the silver dollar he left as his calling card. However, despite disguises and calling cards, Reeves treated his position with great respect. Even in the face of morally conflicting circumstances, Reeves held the law above all else. You see, in 1902, Bassus Reeves' son Benny was charged with murder of his wife. Reeves, though reluctant to take on a difficult task, took the job when nobody else would. Though shaken by the thought of it, Reeves arrested his own son, and Benny Reeves served 22 years in Leavenworth Prison. Although Reeves' accomplishments as a lawman greatly overshadowed those of many of his more famous white compatriots, the legend of Bass Reeves was, for the most part, lost to history. The Lone Ranger lives on. The iconic character, virtually synonymous with the myth of the American West, was played by a white man, even though his character and story were very similar to those of Reeves. Still today, the legend of the Lone Ranger as a whitewashed portrayal of the American West is yet another indicator of the institutional racism at work in both Hollywood and the nation as a whole.